So, should injuries matter when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks?
See, that's the biggest issue with the argument that we were just having over Instagram is because our top four is consensus. It's just a matter of do we do we deem someone the same as we saw them when they were on the field, or like deem them like okay, this is what they were, barring injury. We're gonna still think of them this way until they prove us otherwise, or is it okay? They got injured pretty badly. That's gonna knock them. Like that's the argument. That's the only argument that we
Yeah.
have.
Just stand, Mr. Jack.
See, I look at it as if I saw someone play on the field, like that's how I see them until proven otherwise, especially if they're a four-time MVP like Rodgers. I still have him higher. I mean, I get I'm a Packer fan, so like whenever I talk about like either former Packers or
There's
like
inherent bias.
yeah, like you guys, I feel like I don't know, I can't get past that. Like you guys think that that's bias, but that I mean that, but that's also just how I
Well,
feel.
no, it's what I mean is it's one of those things where it's like you could say that about literally anybody. It's so the problem is the injuries, JJ. I'm not saying it's wrong, but like injuries are so subjective. Like you had Adrian Peterson rehab at ACL in 9 months, and then he came back and was almost 100% of what he
But
was. Again, you can't possibly
okay,
do the
but you gotta
same.
look at
But on the other side of the
but that was
coin,
that
you
was an
can have
anomaly
a
though.
season like a career-ending injury, but you don't know that until they're back on the field.
Yeah.
But so my thinking is right is when like a player suffer like everybody gets injured. Like if it's like a sprain or what, that doesn't really matter to me. Like if it's just missing a few weeks. But when it's like significant injuries that like consistently happen, like in the case of like Joe Burrow, I feel like it should knock them down a few because it's at some point it starts to become a trend more than it just becomes like a freak accident, you know?
I get that. If it's consistent like Burrow, I could see that. I don't think like for your argument of Lamar being ahead of Burrow, I don't
How
think that
though? How though?
I
Like
don't
Lamar.
think that this MVP, his MVP this season, I don't really think that was like it's a Mickey Mouse MVP. I don't
I
really
I
Here's the thing.
impress that
Hey,
should have happened.
I get
hey,
that. I get that. I
DJ,
will
here's
I
the
will
thing.
agree. Mickey Mouse.
I just gotta say something about Burrow and Lamar before I let you go. But think about this: Lamar has all these gaudy numbers in the regular season, but then the postseason, what the hell happened this year when he got the
Even
one?
then, he wasn't real. His stats weren't even that crazy this year.
Burrow, I'm pretty sure Burrow's
Well,
been no higher than a 3 seed in every playoff run, and they've beaten Mahomes. He's beaten Mahomes what 3 or 4 times?
At least
but
twice.
how are we gonna hold over like a third of the season over him? I understand that he shits the bed like more than a few times like in the postseason, but like other than like the Super Bowl run that they went on, what can we say about Burrow other than that in his career? Like he hasn't led the league in any statistical category. He's only finished third. I think it was like third or second in MVP conversation once in a season. I don't know, man.
No, I
Like,
get what you mean, but at the same time, again, in the NFL, they value playoff success more. And Lamar, I love Lamar. I
but he
love.
hasn't had it. He's only went to the Super Bowl once.
Yeah, I know, but that's
Yeah,
one
he's
more
had
appearance
such a
than
short
Lamar.
career.
That's one more appearance than Lamar.
Yep.
Lamar,
Right, and he's been injured in two of the years, and he hasn't been able to finish the season. That's what I mean. Like it's like he's had a short career, but
yeah.
he's missed two full seasons.
I mean, Jack, what
From
do
what we've seen on the field, when he's on the field, how many years out like so his rookie season he was injured, right? What was
Yeah.
it, second or third season that he got to the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
Like how many times okay, I get the injury argument, and I agree with it. I do agree with it. But when he is on the field, which is probably like only like 2 seasons, one
yes,
of those was to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at it from the perspective of okay, what has he actually accomplished when he's on the field? Like I get like the statistics argument, I mean, it's not there completely, but he's a winner. And he's only in the two. Let's go with the 2-season argument. I think if I don't know how often he was actually on the field, but let's say it was 2 full seasons, right? One of those he beat. I think he beat Josh Allen, and then he beat Mahomes,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously lost to Stafford. But like he got it. He got to the Super Bowl.
I think, JJ, before you go, I liken this to the GOAT debate in the sense that like it's hard to evaluate these guys until they've had the same number of seasons and like success comparatively. It's like, yes, Braun has 40,000 points and he's the glorious king, and Jordan has 6 rings. Like, but it's really hard to argue that because they played in different eras. And it's the same thing with Lamar and Burrow. They took different paths to get to the league. They took different paths to get to the Super Bowl. Like, and again, and like Jack said, Burrow beat Allen and Mahomes in the same playoff run. You don't just normal people don't just do that. Like, it doesn't just happen.
That's not a fluke.
I got a question for Jackson. How do you view Jimmy G and Brock Purdy then? Because your argument with Joe Burrow was that he's a winner, but what do you view Jimmy G and Brock Purdy?
See, I think the Niners team is far greater than that Bengals team. I mean, Burrow brought that offense, that high school offensive line to the Super Bowl. So it's not
brother, missing a point, brother.
What's that?
Okay, but you could say the same exact thing about the Bengals team because they have Jamar, T. Higgins, they have Joe Mixon. That team was not a mess when Joe Burrow had his what a surprise. Like the team was the year that Joe Burrow had the most success is when the team was the most stacked.
You're making the offensive argument. I get it. But that Ravens defense is just as good as that Bengals offense. So I don't see I think these teams are semi-equal when you're arguing the Burrow and like the Lamar Jackson debate. I think their teams are semi-equal. It's just their defense is a lot better. So that's going to elevate them in that aspect. Like they in the last game in the AFC Championship game, I did look up at least the score. It was 17-10. They had them at 17 points, but you only score a touchdown against that Chiefs defense. I get it. The Chiefs defense isn't awful, but it's not as good as the Ravens defense.
No.
Like he wasn't going up against Mahomes here. He's going up against the Chiefs defense.
Yeah, that's the hard part about these arguments is that we're talking about these QBs and we forget that there's 11 guys on the field that are supposed to go stop that one guy from wheeling and dealing all over the place. So I'll get to your was it Purdy and Jimmy G? It's one of those things where it's like it's just kind of they're both winners. The numbers say they're winners. Then Jimmy G has any playoff success. Like it's the same argument we have with Burrow. Is they both have playoff success. They both made Super Bowl appearances, but they've never won the thing. Whereas with Purdy and Lamar, they've both made one Super Bowl appearance combined.
I just don't like the whole idea of a quarterback where it's like, well, Herbert would be a top 5 quarterback if he had a good offensive line, if he had a good coach, if he had better receiver. You know what I'm saying? Like at some point it becomes too much. It's like, okay, realistically, all of that stuff's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is Brady shouldn't be the greatest of all time then because he's had the greatest supporting cast of all time.
No, he has not. No, that is a lie.
Brady got carried by Edelman.
I don't know who told
Brady
you
got carried by Edelman.
Brady. When has Brady had a top 5 receiving core? Like if you realistically look at it, he's had other than Randy Moss or not even Deion Branch. Deion Branch was not a top 5 wide receiver at that time. He has not had any wide receiver that's ever a top 5 wide receiver.
I mean, yeah.
I think we're forgetting about the greatest tight end of all time. Like just the most.
But he was
ever.
But he has the same argument. He was always injured. Just like when people talk about Kelsey and Gronk, they hold against him that he's always injured.
Yeah,
he was never on the field.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's it's one of those things where Jack, he is right in the sense that other than Gronk, his like Edelman, Wes Welker, and a bunch of dudes under 5'6".
We had Chris Hogan. We had a fucking lacrosse
Yeah, you
player
have Chris.
playing
Yeah,
wide
you had
receiver.
they had a lacrosse player on their roster, and all
We
the
had seven.
they
We
had
had
three
7-Eleven
slot
How was
employees
their
of
defense
football.
then? How
so
was their
Huh?
defense?
the defense. Yeah, it's
But
And how
he's a
is their
Belichick.
coach? The greatest coach of all time? Like,
casually.
like I'm saying, put Rodgers in that situation. I get I'm a Packer fan. I get it. But put Rodgers in that situation. Is he not winning 6 rings?
Not.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch,
I could
brother. That's a stretch, brother.
I could see 3. I
That's a
could see him
stretch,
winning at
brother.
least 3 or 4.
Okay, so even if it's 3 or 4, right? He's got 1 right now. So what you're saying is Brady had a much better situation than Rodgers did.
Yes, to an extent that's true.
No, well,
To an
If
extent.
you're saying 3 or 4 in the Patriots system, that's more than 1. I could do simple math here, brother.
but how many times did he hold the 1 seed in the NFC? He didn't just get 4 MVPs for no reason. Obviously, those teams must have been loaded if he would have gone to that point.
I
You
mean,
can't just say he was carrying those teams the entire time. They were just carrying a bunch of
he's
bums
had
and
good
got an
offenses, but
MVP.
he hasn't had great defenses in the slightest. Those defenses has failed him plenty of times.
But they've held the 1 seed before, so that defense must have at least been in the top 5 for him to get
I
to
mean,
that
when
point.
you're averaging over 30 points a game, it's hard to not be the 1 seed.
Who was Jack? Who was on that Super Bowl? Who was on that Packers offense with him when they won the Super Bowl? Was it Jordy Nelson?
So the offense was great. Yeah, it was Nelson, it was Driver, James Jones.
But he did have Devontae Adams for 3 years, though. Which
Devontae
is
didn't come
significantly.
until the next year,
Yeah, I think
But,
Devontae came
but,
after a year or two after they won the Super
and
Bowl.
he wasn't great when he was young anyway.
but he had 2 or 3 years of Devontae in his prime, which is significant. He's a significantly better wide receiver than any of those, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, but that's about it.
I want to circle back to that Purdy. Like, I can't stop thinking about the Purdy Jimmy G argument. Like, it's so hard because the numbers say they were winners, but then Jimmy G didn't win a Super Bowl.
Jimmy G won. Okay, but that's exact. So Jimmy G is a perfect example of the Burrow argument. He has gone to what is it? He's gone to a Super Bowl. He wins 70% of his games, and they're not. And you can't say that Jimmy G and Joe Burrow have the same amount of accomplishments right now.
That's true, but Jimmy G wasn't like. If we're gonna talk about it from an injury standpoint, Jimmy G was on the field more. He won 70% of his games because he was on the field more. He has a bigger sample size than Burrow. That's the hard part.
He also wasn't the reason why they went to that 2020 Super Bowl.
That brings up the Niners system QB argument that we could talk about for hours.
Just saying, when you look at player to player, they have almost the same identical resume. It's like I said, it's a concept, it's an idea. I don't like it.
Is
It's like saying,
good?
it's like saying, oh my god, like he's so good at sex, but he busts in like 4 seconds. It's an idea. You're not finishing the job, all right?
Now, again, like I said, that's why it's hard because you could make that comparison for you can find 15 other QBs that played in the last 10 years and make that comparison to Joe Burrow, but I don't like I don't know what we're supposed to do here because like comparing Garoppolo, Jimmy G to Burrow, just there's such a number 1 overall pick, sexy porn star Jimmy. You know what I mean?
That's what people do because they hold on to where a player was like where they were drafted at. It make it seem like there's like a wide gap between the two. When they're like when I said before, like they have the same exact resume. You know, this is why everybody was getting on Baker for so long because like you're the first overall pick, and your team isn't consistently in the playoffs or winning in the playoffs. Like that shouldn't matter to me, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, again, it comes back to situation. It's exactly what you said. It's like Brady had elite defense, but at the same time that offense was putting up 30 points a game, and then with the Bengals, that defense was good enough to beat Mahomes, and all he had to do was score three touchdowns.
I just feel like for me, for top 3 or 5 quarterbacks, it's like what quarterback can I take like right now, like off of a team and drop him out any really like I would say like 30 teams because the Panthers are out. Like on like any team, and they would have about the same success, if not more. And to me,
Herbert,
that's only
Justin
like three or
Herbert.
five quarterbacks. Like it's like Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and I mean you could argue for some other ones, but
What's the
I
thing?
feel like for those three for me are for sure. You could drop them at any team, really 30 teams, and they would have about the same success,
Is
if
the
not more.
Allen over Mahomes thing one of those where he makes more big plays than Lamar, or just that he's like from a pure talent standpoint? Because like I would
Wait, Allen over Mahomes?
no, like Allen and Lamar are sitting at 2 and 3 for him. Mahomes is one. That's unanimous. That's we're not going to argue about that. We don't need to spend our time. It's he has Allen over Lamar, and it's not bad. Those two are interchangeable. I don't like. I need to know why he has Allen over Lamar before I can agree with you.
Allen over Lamar. I just feel like because for me it's Lamar. For Allen, it's I feel like the passing is the biggest one. Like Lamar's game is really reliant. Like I'd say like 40% reliant on the run, you know? Whereas I feel like Allen's first option is to pass, which helps the team out more. You know what I'm saying?
Not only that, but he also has some crazy legs too. Just as much as
Yeah.
I mean, not just as much as Jackson, but I mean,
Here's the
he
thing,
might
though.
be number 2 in the league.
Like
Here,
Allen's third option is to run the ball. Like he goes through his first read, second read. Whereas I feel like with Lamar, it's like it's the first read, and then it's like, okay, well I need to scramble now.
Yeah.
here's the problem with that though is Allen's play style. Again, I'm gonna harp on this, and it sucks, and I don't want to. But his game, Lamar's game isn't turnover prone. Lamar is gonna take abuse from running. That's just what's gonna happen. His legs are gonna run out at some point. Allen, the only reason the Bills can't succeed or did succeed with Diggs is the fact that Allen had all the turnovers. And now I'm not saying that was the only reason, but the majority of that, like at the end of that Bills Vikings game, how'd that game end? Picked off at the goal line. Like it's one of those things where it's like I would elevate Lamar simply because his play style is a little bit safer in the context of possessing the ball and winning games.
For me, it's just like it's Mahomes, and then there's like a gap between him and Allen, and then it's Lamar and Josh Allen like together. Because I just feel like the thing that Mahomes has over Allen is he has the ability to like elevate other players on this team, and I also trust Mahomes with the ball much more than I do with Josh Allen. I just feel like when I was watching Allen the last couple of seasons, it felt like he was more so dragging the team along with him, as opposed to elevating the players on his team like Mahomes has in the last 3 or 4 years.
Saying that with Stephon Diggs and like Gabe Davis and all the big bodied receivers that he had in Buffalo is insane. Like I'm not saying it's a bad take. I'm just saying it's the fact that we're even exploring that option post Stephon Diggs trade.
Well, I
So
say that because I've seen Mahomes do it. He did it last year, or he did it the last 2 years without Tyreek. Now we're going to be able to see him. I don't know. Like Allen could prove me wrong this season because I mean he has Curtis Samuel as his main wide receiver, which
a
is
little Shakir
disgusting.
1,000 yard season loading.
Well, then
I'm
they'll
just
probably pick up a wide receiver in the draft too.
until then, like if I see like Allen can close that, like I can see that him do the like he doesn't have to win a Super Bowl, but if you just get to like the playoffs and at least get to the divisional or even the conference championship, then I'll be okay, that gap's closer, you know. Like I get the Super Bowls with Mahomes, but I don't really hold that in my rankings like past, you know. Like what am I seeing right now?